So I am so excited to introduce our first speaker of the night. We do something a little bit different. We do something a bit different at Fuckup Nights. We don't read out a bio or, you can Google all of that. We have 3 fun facts about each speaker. And our first speaker is Avi, and he eats teaspoons of Nutella all day. I totally relate to that. He's held his breath for 4 minutes and free dove 140 feet. And he once went down 2,500 feet in a submarine, I think. Avi, I'm so excited to hear your fuck up.
Thank you. How's everyone doing tonight? Great. Okay, so let me set the stage. I'm in university studying finance, very nerdy, very bookish, and I do my first co-op at Nestle in corporate finance, and I absolutely hate it. And before then, I had my whole life figured out. My friends would make fun of me because I had a planning binder, and I planned my whole life out for like 20 years in a binder. And after that, I'm like, okay, I gotta do something different. So I watched the movie The Beach. How many people have seen it here? Yeah, okay. Young Leonardo DiCaprio, amazing movie. And the whole idea behind that movie is here's a guy who kind of escapes. It's about escaping and goes to a beach and does it on his own. And I love this idea, so I dropped out of co-op. I went traveling and backpacking through Asia, and that was lovely. But it put a seed in me, this whole seed of fuck corporate, and I want to be free, and Asian parents, fuck you, and then so on and so forth, all right? So, and this is, one second. Okay. So I was finished school, I was working as a trader at the time, and this is during the financial crisis. And the markets are crashing, and the kind of trading we're doing, it wasn't working. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna live up to this idea of escapism and go work on a cruise ship. So I went and did that for 2 years, and that was super fun and a lot of risk. I was learning a lot of skills as well. Learned how to at least speak on stage and stuff, so that was good. And there I met my ex. And she was from Hungary, and it was interesting because our relationship just started very slowly. It just kind of happened, and it didn't stop happening, right? So we both went with it. And then the company I worked for went bankrupt. And I found myself in a position where I'm like, okay, I can come back to Toronto, I can move to Hungary, or what else, right? And on the cruise ship, we'd go to this beautiful island called Roatan, which was a tropical paradise. And at the same time, I'd heard that someone was selling rum cakes in Belize and making a killing, making $10,000 a day profit selling rum cakes. So it was the middle of winter, and I'm like, fuck it. I'm leaving, I'm moving to this island. Anything's better than the shitty weather. So we moved to this island, and it was interesting because she quit her job and moved to this island with me, right? And that was a lot of belief, right? Let's see here. So we started our rum cake company, and it was amazing at first, right? It's like we're entrepreneurs, we're living on this beautiful island, we have 3 cats, what a lovely life, and we're gonna be so rich, and we're gonna be rum cake barons and be these Caribbean superstars, and life's gonna be so good. So there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of fantasy. I like building things, I don't like maintaining them, and this is a big challenge I always face. But I had faith, and it was great, right? And we got this little stall in one of the cruise ship ports. This was a brand new cruise ship port, so they had 1 million people visiting each year, and there's a ton of opportunity. And I was splitting it with a guy who sold coconuts out of it, right? So I became a rum cake hustler. And this was a grind, right? Like this was me, when the reality set in, when we finally did everything else, it turned out I was hustling rum cakes, right? And I was catcalling people off cruise ships trying to get them to buy rum cakes, and they were super expensive because we were getting them made in Belize and shipped to Mexico and then back down to Honduras, and it was madness, right? So constantly doing this over and over, day after day, with the coconut guys splitting coconuts, and it sort of become a grind, right? And we tried different promotions, we tried different things, but it wasn't working. And at the same time, I felt like our relationship was also rocky as well. It was all those things that we kind of overlooked because we were in a beautiful place and whatever started creeping up on us. And I think when things are wrong, naturally that happens, right? Naturally, with enough time, all the fault lines start showing, and you find yourself in reality. So then, moving ahead, there wasn't a big moment where everything just collapsed. It was more a realization after giving it a shot for a year that it just doesn't make any sense, you know. And one thing they teach you in trading is cut your losses, right? Or if you play poker, you know when to fold them. And these ideas kept coming back to me over and over again because it wasn't working. And I think at the same time, the relationship wasn't working. And this was a big low point because I staked so much of my ego and my belief in myself on winning and getting things done, and this just wasn't happening, you know? So it's a moment of like truth and failure, and then also it spills out into your relationship as well, where, you know, when things are peachy on one side, they don't stay peachy in the other. So shut the rum cake company down, and that was hard because I had nothing to do. We were broke because we spent all our money on this business. And then at the same time, the relationship was failing, so that ended a couple months later too. And I remember feeling such a relief that the relationship ended because it wasn't right. It was never right. Not for 1 second was it right. And there's always, we just kept going because it was easy to take the step forward, right? And I think that's the test. You know, there's this saying goes, love knows not its depth till the time of separation. And in that time of separation, there was no love. It was relief. So, yeah, that was tough. And then after that, I stayed on the island, and I set up an expedition company, which did really well. We did like catamarans and whale sharks and that kind of stuff. And it was good in some ways, but it was still kind of broken in others. You know, like there's a lot of stagnation. There's a lot of moral hazards on the island as well. And I was just generally reckless and lonely and all those kinds of things. But in paradise, mind you, right? So it's good and it's bad, but at the end of the day, something had to change. And then I remember flying back to Toronto, like to go visit my parents, and I was staying with them in Markham, and I had a bag of mushrooms in my drawer. I had a big bag of mushrooms in my drawer, and I'm like, okay, they're at work, I'm gonna do something different. So I took 8 grams of mushrooms and just went to outer space. And that was a big revelation for me, because I'm like, oh shit, I'm escaping a lot of things. Now people here that love me, and they're getting older, and all these things, and that was my decision to move back to Toronto, the city that I once hated and now love. Yeah, and then after that, like it was an exercise in like trying to find purpose. So started a charity in Toronto called Not Just Tourists. We collect medical supplies, send them all over the world. It's all volunteer-based, but it's my great love. Did that 9 years ago. It's grown. We've sent over 2 million pounds of medical supplies to 80 different countries. We've been able to do cool things like, you know, like send supplies to Ukraine and to Syria and to all these different places. We're getting stuff ready for Turkey. During the pandemic, we sent 30,000 masks to China, you know, like, so in a weird way, if I hadn't been on this path, I wouldn't have found Not Just Tourists. And at the same time, I got to do aid work in Syria for 4 years, and that was amazing too. So yeah, and that's, I guess the big lesson here in a roundabout way is, while I'm not where I thought I was going to be, I think I found purpose, right? And if this is the path that took me to get here, then so be it. Yeah, and that's it. And then now I have a family. I got a 2-year-old daughter. I got a kid due in 8 days. So different life, right? Different, pare the risk down. You know, it's all about simple joys, lots of responsibility, trying to balance things. But yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. Great story. Thank you so much, Avi, for sharing and for being so vulnerable. So now we're going to jump into some Q&A. And this